This is I wouldn't say it's an easy profession, but I would say it's a tremendously rewarding profession on the screening side. And I would say, you need to understand your own risk tolerance and understand that,
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's no longer a situation of if you'll be sued or if you'll get a dispute. It's when.
Welcome to Behind the Screens, conversations with background screening pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Behind the Screens, Conversation with Background Pros. And you'll saying that sometimes you'll hear when someone's introduced, here's a person who needs no introduction. Well, this is one of those times. Here is a person who really needs no introduction. We all know her. We all look forward every year to hearing her talk at PBSA. We all look forward to finding out what's happening. We all look forward to getting scared at all the things that we don't know. Miss Pam Devata. Pam, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Les. I'm thrilled to be here.
And we are thrilled to have you. I have to say, you are not only such a wonderful resource and source of information, you're also one of the nicest people I know in the industry. But at the same time, of all the lawyers I can think of in my career that I would least want to be on the other side of.
Well, I'm going to take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Absolutely. So starting with that, obviously, I think people know you're an attorney and that you do a great deal of legal work involved in the screening industry. So what's your current role? What are you currently doing? What do you like about it? And what's most interesting about it?
Sure. So I am an equity partner at Seyfarth Shaw. I've been at the firm for over 20 years, which is dating myself. But I lead our background screening, compliance, and litigation team. We've got a team of a number of folks nationwide, specialized in all things related to background screening, compliance, and litigation for employers and CRAs, resellers, those types of entities.
Okay. And you've been doing that did you start with that with your career? What was your path to get there? Did you start off saying in law school, I'm going to specialize in background screening?
And shockingly, no. So I'm an employment lawyer by trade. And so I actually came out of law school and I was a summer associate at Seyfarth. It's the only firm I've ever been at. I was a summer associate and then really started in sort of a funny way, if you will. I got a 50-state survey. And for those of you who don't know what that is, really, it's a survey of, the laws of the 50 states. And really, what was interesting about that was I was a very, very baby junior first year lawyer, right? So I started on September 4th of 2001. And then we had September 11th. And really, the world obviously changed. And so there was not a lot of work for baby first year lawyers. And so I had an opportunity to do a 50-state survey. And I was able to do, research on like 5 to 10 states of FCRA laws. This survey, by the way, may be very well known to many of those listening or out there in the background screening industry world, because it has morphed over, the last 20 years into our PBSA affinity guide and what we certainly rely on as a go-to source for updated laws. But I was able to take a leadership role and realized, wow, this is sort of interesting. I'm really interested in this type of law, and maybe I won't just do position statements and employment discrimination, but this is under really the rubric, and it was under the employment section, of course, of the FCRA because of employment purposes. And at that time, we were looking only primarily at obligations of employers.
Wow. And then the rest is history.
The rest is history. That's right. That's right. It's actually a funny story because what happened was in 2003, we basically got a phone call and someone had said, hey, have you heard about this new burgeoning, organization? And at that time, as you well know, right, there was a conference in Clearwater and it was going to be the first ever conference that was going to be held in Scottsdale. And so, as a baby second year attorney, I wrote a business plan. I took my little 50 state survey and my laptop computer and a plastic fishbowl and got approval from the firm to fly Greg Davis and myself down to Scottsdale and be one of, I think, 4 exhibitors at the first ever annual PBSA in 2003.
That's right, at the hotel in Scottsdale.
Yep.
And Greg moved on. He's in-house counsel
He
now.
is.
Yeah,
That's
right.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
right.
he was originally your partner in crime, and now then he moved on to a private industry. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
right.
that's great. So you were at the very first meeting in Scottsdale.
It was.
And when it was just all kind of brand new. Oh, that's wonderful. So in your representation, you represent, is it primarily CRAs and class action, or is it individual employers as well, or what's your mix?
Yeah, it's the whole gamut. So,
Yeah.
we represent right now about 200 or so consumer reporting agencies. Seyfarth is a very large employment firm. It's a full service firm. We've got about a little over now 900 attorneys
Wow.
throughout the world. And we do a gamut of everything. We're known very much for employment. So obviously we have a lot of employer clients.
Right.
And so from every year, I was just looking at it since it's the beginning of the year, I sort of do a look back on the year before. And, I probably touched over 300 employer clients with whom we gave counseling or did litigation for. And again, another 200 or so background screening companies. So it's a really nice mix. It keeps me on my toes. There's always, as I'm sure we'll talk about, new and interesting things coming up. And, still with this day and age, there are still both employers and CRAs who, have questions that are not as novel, right? And that we can easily answer and
Right.
can give advice on and that are sort of day to day. And then you get the really interesting ones that keep you on your toes, or plaintiffs' counsels that are coming up with new theories.
So I assume that's what you like about background screening. I mean, the fact that it's every day something new, and just when you think you've seen it all, boom, right? Something new comes up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love the fact that it's not static. I mean, when I first became an employment lawyer, I remember people saying, oh gosh, employment, that's so narrow. And then I really started focusing on the Fair Credit Reporting Act and all things related to background checks. And
Right.
I remember somebody saying, when I was a very junior attorney, or this FRC, what, they couldn't even get the acronym right. What is the, why are you doing that, Pam? I mean, it's really, like you're pigeonholing yourself. I think it's a really bad idea. I think I'm getting the last laugh now, 20 years later, with how the industry has grown, with how, unfortunately, litigation, regulation has really changed.
So we need you to settle a burning question that's been in my mind for some time. Is it FCRA or FCRA?
What's funny is I think it's actually, in my opinion, has changed. I do remember when I first started out as a junior attorney, when people would say FCRA, I was like, well, why would you say FCRA? It's FCRA. It's like
Right.
EEOC. You're not going to say EOCA, right? So at this point, it's almost a question of, does it really matter? I know what you're talking about. Either way, it's the same thing with saying statutory sites. Oh, is it a section 607 or is it section 1681 EB? They're all the same, right? And so at the end of the day, I think if you're in the industry and you know what you're doing, you got to be conversant kind of in all of that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes when attorneys who don't do a lot of this and they start throwing thicker around, that always, it's always seemed to me that, well, maybe they haven't done a lot of it, because normally,
Right.
normal people just say FCRA. Right.
That's right. That's right. I certainly say FCRA. I'm not sure I've ever said FCRA.
Right. I hear that. I do the same. I had to, for a split second, I have to go, oh, I see what you're trying to say.
Right.
So, I mean, based upon your time in the industry, is there you started early on.
Yeah.
Is there a lesson you learned early that still sticks with you today that comes to mind as something, sort of top of mind?
Yeah. I think for me, the lesson really is when clients call me, they want me to be their trusted advisor. And so, I think that I learned a lot of lessons, sometimes the hard way, but generally just based on, my experience in the industry. And I think, one lesson is really, often clients want to know the answer, but they're running a business, right? And so giving practical, pragmatic legal advice, not saying no, but saying yes, but. The other thing is, a lot of times what I think some people getting into the industry don't understand is it's an art, not a science, right? And
Right.
so there's risk tolerance. So someone's risk tolerance may be very, very high, and another client's or company's risk tolerance may be very low. And so understanding definition of success, understanding, the voice of the client, understanding what they want and what their goals are help me be a better advisor and frankly a better litigator, because I can understand their risk tolerance may be very different than mine. And frankly, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what my risk tolerance is. It matters
Right.
that I
Yeah.
provide them with the appropriate legal advice that they can make that decision.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of times, unless it's black letter established law, the real answer is it depends. And sometimes it depends on what a jury finds or what a court decides. You don't know the answer until someone answers.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not shy about giving definitive answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of times the answer is, well, you could do this, and these are your risks and benefits. You can do this, and these are your risks and benefits. And if somebody asks me what I would do, I obviously will tell them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's generally not my company.
Yeah. It's exactly right. And sometimes we see this a lot, that what a lawyer tells you to do, that's the most conservative, is the least appealing alternative from a business viewpoint.
Right. Right. Well, that's why it's a yes, but, right? It's a yes, but if you did this, you could mitigate your risk, for example, or that would
Yeah.
be fine. But if you did it this way, and that's I think what's just so wonderful about my position and why I'm so happy with the work that I get to do, because I have amazing clients and I have amazing people who generally, want to do the right thing. It's
Right.
why, frankly, I got into employment law in the first place. And I do management side employment law, right? I represent companies. And so a lot
Right.
of times people say, well, how can you do that? How I don't understand, Pam. How can you represent companies and management? And my view really is, well, I can stop discrimination before it even happens. I can stop you violating a law or hurting a consumer's rights before you do that. I can tell you how to do it the right way. And so that is very empowering.
Right.
It means a lot to me because my goal is to help my clients. And I feel like I get to do that on a daily basis, which is tremendously rewarding.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, in looking back, is there an accomplishment or achievement that stands out in your mind that just goes to the top of your head that you like, wow, that was a good one?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it would change depending on which time frame, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And sort of looking back with hindsight now, I would say building the team that we've built and sort of building the expertise in the industry and being able to share that. I mean, I think that's one of my biggest accomplishments.
Oh, that's tremendous. So, you're talking about when you say build a team, not only the team at Seyfarth,
Yeah,
right? Would you have some tremendous lawyers working that on
I
your
agree.
team?
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, just so much talent, and the knowledge that you have given and the empowerment you've given to people in the industry. It's just been tremendous.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I really do every time when we speak, when I come to PBSA, when I do things like this. Obviously, we're not, this is just a little background and this is the fun part. But I really do try to bring my A game, and I try to, if nothing else, have people who have heard me maybe, multiple times speak take away with a nugget or two that maybe they haven't
Right.
heard before or something, because people can hear people drone on, but
Right.
I really do try to add value.
Well, I think every time you talk, there's nuggets of plenty. So, right, I have no question about that, because people coming out of your session and you see their eyes wide, going, "Oh my God!"
Right.
So, mission accomplished.
Well,
So, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the legal thing, but before we go into more personal areas, just sort of on the top of your head, you've seen it, the industry change and go through transformations, and here we are, as you said, I think 20 or some years later, just sort of like, naming just one or two, not all of them. It's time for changes and challenges. From your perspective, would you pigeonhole as the top one or two changes and the top one or two challenges And if they want to hear more details, they can come to PBSA.
Sure. No, it sounds good. So I think the top one or two sort of changes would be, when I started off, there were a handful of firms, maybe two or three plaintiffs' counsels who had any real knowledge or expertise in the FCRA or in background screening in general. And now, frankly, it's about 25 or 30 specialized firms who have teams of people who, only focus on this type of law, right? And so because of that, there's increased litigation, there's increased nuances with the type of statutory interpretation, and there's more regulation. I mean, earlier this year, we had the opinion letter from the CFPB on file disclosures, right? File disclosures have been around since the beginning of the FCRA, and now there's a new interpretation of what that means. So that's a change, right? It's also a challenge because then you have to, I'm a very big proponent of being proactive and not necessarily only reactive, but you also have to be reactive, right? You have to make sure that if a regulator says something, you're paying attention to it. So those, I think, are the two sort of biggest changes and challenges that I've seen.
And when you say there's been an explosion of firm, you're talking both on the plaintiff side and the defense side as well, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I was really focused on the plaintiff side because obviously there's a contingent of people who want to put background screening companies out of business. There always has been. I hope there will not always need to be, but, and frankly, companies who are in this space doing this type of work are doing it for a reason, right? To protect people, to protect property, to protect employees. There's the, very, very important reason why people are in the background screening industry. But that's right. There's been just an enormous explosion of litigation and regulation over the past few years.
Yeah, and the fact that you can keep on top of it just amazes me. I mean, I think we've talked about this, but in the way back in the beginning of time, when at the Brownstein conferences, I used to give the introduction, sort of the law speech. And in about 90 minutes, I can cover the FCRA, cover the FTC opinion letters, which were a thing at the time, no longer.
Right.
A few states that were distinctive and a couple lawsuits. And people would just come wide out of that thinking, what do you mean we have to send an adverse action letter and a follow-up letter? Where's that? Well, that's just, in the FCRA.
Right.
And boy, and the world has changed. What I used to do was kindergarten compared to what you do. I mean, it's just amazing. So my hat off to you that, your ability just to not only keep on top of it, but understand where it all fits in the big picture. And then your generosity in sharing it with the industry so that they're aware of it. So that's all fantastic. So wonderful. So looking at this, we talked about PBSA, and obviously one of the most popular sessions of PBSA, and the one I always attend if I go, is your kind of overview of the law. What role has PBSA played in your career, and just tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah. And like I said, it was at that first one, and I had to miss my first ever conference ever, twice a year, 2 times a year, twice a year for the last 20 years. I missed my first one last spring, because I went on spring break with my kids. I mean, I've gone through, 2 pregnancies and many, many, many conferences. And, I can say without a doubt that PBSA has been unbelievably instrumental in my career. I think it's an amazing organization. I think it, again, as you know, because you were there last, right? I mean, I'm so fortunate to have met people, mentors, friends, colleagues, clients who, I can honestly say my life would not be the same without. Certainly my career would not, but my personal life as well. I love going to PBSA. I love going because the people, I love seeing how things have ebbed and flowed and changed, and seeing people who are truly friends, and some of whom are, in my view, family.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's what a lucky group we are to have such a kind, inviting, warm, sharing organization of competitors. I can't say enough about it. So I hope I give back just the tiniest bit that PBSA, frankly, has given to me. My family my children know PBSA. They know that, They knew it when it was at PBS. They know PBSA. They know people in the industry because it is such a big part of
Right.
my life and my career. So I can't say enough good things about the organization.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I mean, obviously, you've been involved as a speaker on innumerable occasions. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to remember back to that very first session in Scottsdale. We had that little room and, the few sponsors. And I
Yeah.
gave the very first speech and called it to order. And, the rest is, then it took off from there. So that was, you were there for the entire ride. That was great.
Yeah.
And
It's
we
pretty
did something.
amazing.
We did something outside by the pool. You bring back
Yeah.
memories. We had a pool lunch, and each table had a topic, and
Yeah.
it was crazy. And it was just like, right.
And look how far it's come, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that's really, it's a testament to the founders and to the founding members and to, the staff and to Melissa as the executive director. I mean, it really is the board of directors at every iteration.
Right.
I mean, if you look, you look at, and I always find it so interesting because being a fly on the wall and imagining when I bring new people, right, from my team or imagining going a first time attendee, and you just look at all the people who have done so much,
Right.
just stalwarts in the industry and legends who have given inordinate amount of time and energy, like yourself, like all of the chairs. I mean, it's pretty impressive. So again, I'm just so thrilled and lucky to be a part of that organization. I'm so happy that they keep asking me back to come and speak. And yeah, and I can't wait to see now with all of the new chapters, now we really are a global
Right.
industry association. And I think it's fabulous.
Well, that's great. Well, let's go outside of background screening for a little
Sure.
bit. And I really appreciate hearing everything you had to say about PBSA. And again, I do have to say, and I think I said it before, but the team you've put together, all the attorneys that work with you, and I've dealt with a number of them over the years, are all also just fantastically skilled and competent and really, just
Very lucky. I have an
yeah.
amazing group of folks that I'm so
Yeah.
lucky to work with. Yeah, absolutely.
So outside of background screening, putting aside your attorney hat, your PBSA hat, tell us about you.
Sure.
What is it you do? You made a reference about, having a couple kids, and, tell us what you do when you're not, reading cases and doing all the stuff you do with your attorney role.
Sure. So I love spending time with my family. We're a very big foodie travel family. I've got 2 teenage boys. You can see with my gray hairs. But yeah, I have a wonderful husband and I have 2 boys. One is 17, senior in high school. One is a freshman in high school. They keep me very, very, very busy. We're very close. We love to travel. We love to go on vacations. We love to play golf together. That's, besides that and sort of, reading for pleasure, those are the things that I really love to do. I love to go and experience things through their eyes and travel the world.
Well, I'm going to have to say what the listeners are thinking. It's hard for me to believe that you have a 17-year-old son. I'm so right.
Well, yeah, it's hard for me to believe I have a 17-year-old son. And even as early as last night, he kept telling me how he's going to be home from now on for a month. And I should just get ready. And I said, it's January. You're not leaving for college until next August, buddy. Slow it down.
So it's a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old.
Yeah. Well, now he's 15.
14-year-old.
He just turned 15 a week ago today. Yeah.
So the 17-year-old is graduated and going to
is.
college?
He is going to graduate in May.
Oh, okay.
And he's going to attend Emory in Atlanta in the fall.
Oh, Emory in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
So,
he's super excited. We're all super excited. He's a big avid golfer. I spent my entire summer not actually golfing, but walking on a lot of golf courses, watching him golf, which was also just as rewarding.
Oh, that's fantastic, Pam. That's great.
Yeah.
So you have the 2 boys. You do a lot of golfing. What traveling? Domestic, international? What?
All. Yeah. So this last summer was mostly spent on, again, golf courses with my older son. My younger son does a lot of travel soccer, and he's actually a springboard diver.
Wow.
It's very cool. So we got to go to Florida a few times and watch him compete in a couple of national conferences. If we had our druthers, we'd be traveling all over the world. We didn't get to do that too often. We went out of the country, just small trips this year, but that's okay. Yeah, we love it. We love traveling internationally. We love traveling together and experiencing a lot of history. My kids are pretty tolerant of being history buffs. We were just able to go to Montreal last week for a
Nice.
couple of days, and it was really cold, but they were troopers. They, -3, and they're chugging along, going and doing a tour of the port of Montreal. So that was,
Right. So
that
where's
was,
your favorite international destination?
that's a hard one. We actually talk about this quite often as a family, and I would say I go between Greece and Portugal.
Greece and Portugal, two great
But
choices.
yeah. So, but I haven't been a lot of places yet. So I have a lot of places on my bucket list. So subject to change.
Well, now if you add Italy in there, that'll be a real tough choice.
I do love it. So that would be my son's choice, but which is why I didn't say that one. But no, I'm very lucky. They're great travelers, and I think we started traveling really early with them.
Right.
Because frankly, because I do a lot of work, and my husband, is a professional as well. We don't take vacations really without them. Like
Right.
we're going to go to France, we're going to bring them. So I never had that opportunity growing up. I think I went to Disneyland when I was 5. That was it. Those were the vacation. That was the vacation that I took. And don't get me wrong, it was awesome. But we didn't do a lot of vacations. And so, we do with my kids. And we just really, get away from the screen, get away from computers, get away from the world, and really
Right.
try
Yeah.
to spend time with each other.
And are you located in Chicago now?
I am. Yep. I'm
Okay.
in Chicago now and have been for the last 20 years. And it's
Okay.
great. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And when's your next time you get to go out of the country?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think the next time will be, you know what? It's my son's last spring break in high school, and we convinced him to let us tag along. He's going with some friends and their families, but we convinced him to let us tag along also. And so we're going to go to Mexico.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
yes. So I'm
Okay.
looking forward to, you know what? I'm going to Costa Rica. I forgot I'm going to Costa Rica.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So, but that's just a quick getaway with a best friend of mine. So,
Oh, that's
for us
great. Are
yeah.
you going to the Pacific side, the Caribbean side, the
We're
volcano, the
hoping-
rainforest?
honestly, I don't even know. Right?
Doesn't matter.
Wherever they told me to book a flight to, I booked a flight to, and I'll get to see my college roommates.
It doesn't matter. Anywhere in Costa Rica is fabulous.
Anywhere, that's right.
It just doesn't matter.
That's
That's all right.
That's
Okay, well, we're getting towards the end here, but it's time to play fun facts. So tell us something about yourself unrelated to the screening that people may not guess or know about you. What would you say?
Ooh, gosh, I'm such an open book, Les. I mean, something people might not know about me. I hate olives.
There you go. All right. Folks, breaking news, you heard it here. So if you're at a PBSA convention and you're treating Pam to a martini,
No
can
olives.
the olives. No olives.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. That's my fun fact.
All right. Well, it's been so much fun talking with you and finding out all these interesting things. Let me ask you the last couple of questions as we wind down here. Given your experience and your involvement in screenings for PBSA, if there's someone who's sort of starting out in the profession or maybe been in it for a couple of years and trying to decide whether to continue or they want to make it their profession and trying to figure out how to get ahead, what would you tell them? What's your advice? What's your observations?
Yeah, I would say go with your eyes wide open, like anything. This is I wouldn't say it's an easy profession, but I would say it's a tremendously rewarding profession on the screening side. And I would say, you need to understand your own risk tolerance and understand that, unfortunately, it's no longer a situation of if you'll be sued or if you'll get a dispute. It's when, right? And so just like you wouldn't get in a car without a seatbelt, right? Don't jump into the deep end of the
Right.
pool without some safety precautions, whatever that might be, being a member of PBSA, understanding what the laws are, having a good lawyer on speed dial, making sure sort of, what having good insurance policies, that kind of stuff.
That is such great advice. For years and years, my firm was never sued. And the first time we were sued, I took it so personally.
Right.
And someone finally told me, what are you talking about? I mean, if you haven't been sued, you're not a background firm.
Right,
It's
right.
it's just, it's part of business. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's right.
so
It is.
I mean, it's still hard. The first time I was like, oh my God, it's terrible. Someone doesn't like me. And then I realized, all right,
Right.
well, what are you going to do? Well, Pam, let me just say before we conclude here, just how much I enjoy talking to you. And I personally want to thank you for everything that you've done for the profession and all the contributions and how generous you've been in sharing time, not only the presentations you make, but when people come up to you when you're trying to have your martini without an olive and ask you questions, you're just so generous with your time to, to the extent lawyers can be, because it's a little hard. As a lawyer, folks out there, when we ask a lawyer a question and they're not really your lawyer, there's limits to what they can tell you.
Right.
But you're just really generous with your knowledge. So before we sign off, let me give you the floor. Give you the last word here. Do you have any closing thoughts, anything that you'd like to share before we sign off?
Well, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity. Obviously I'm thrilled to be here. So nice to, get to speak with you less because I don't get to see you as often as I used to. So, I love it. I love what you're doing with these podcasts. I think it's new and creative and it's
Thank you.
different view. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Well, Pam, thank you for, number one, being in the podcast. And without repeating myself, thank you for everything you do for everyone. We really appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been another great episode. And I was particularly happy with our guest today that we were able to bring Pam Devata to Behind the Screens to share with you reflections from a background pro. Thanks, Pam.
Thanks so much, Les. Take care.
Thanks. All right, that was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.